So in macro perspective, there is little doubt that countries have to trade with each other if they want to grow fast. And as I said, it is very hard to find an empirical evidence of a reverse kind. The countries that have become protectionist have obviously grown very slowly, and therefore if international trade is not good, the protectionism is even worse. And therefore, if you want a laggard economic growth, then try protectionism and go away from free trade. We almost guarantee you that there will be no economic growth for you. And classic examples are obviously India before 1990, extremely protectionist country, China before 1990, but they both learned the lessons quickly, well, not quickly, because I know when I was in India in your shoes back in, I don't think it must be 1950s, I'm not that old, but when I was a student in India in 70s, early 70s, the protectionism was the name of the game, and Indian government was extremely protectionist. In fact, in those days we used to say India's share of the world imports was 0.06%. And India's share of exports in the world exports was 0.04%. So that's how bad, and this is from a 16% of the world population, exports of only 0.06% and imports of 0.08%. So clearly India was very protectionist, and I think they learned the lesson in a long time period, and finally they opened up. So the macro analysis will obviously support that the free trade is the must. Then we want to talk about, well, what about this economic integrations? What about countries coming together and signing these free trade agreements? Are they really beneficial or not? And I think there are two ways to answer that. Number one is what a Harvard economist, a guy named Jacob Weiner, back in 1962, he made a fantastic analysis of what is called a trade creation process and a trade diversion process. And the trade creation occurs when a country signs a free trade agreement with a product that is produced most efficiently in the world. So when you sign a free trade agreement with the most efficient producer of that good in the world, of course there is what is called a trade creation. And then there is a trade diversion when we sign a free trade agreement with the not so efficient producer of that good. And of course these are product-specific concepts, and therefore for each product you have a most efficient producer, not so efficient producer. So you have to do it for every product that is being traded. But even if you concentrate only on one product, and if that one product is produced not so efficiently by your trading partner, and that's where you are signing your free trade agreement, then obviously you have a trade diversion, and then you have lost obviously a great opportunity. And the opportunity cost is very high because you just missed an opportunity of signing a free trade agreement with the most efficient producer of that good. And I know these trade creation and trade diversion concepts have application even in your personal life. That in your personal life, do you think a marriage with any boyfriend or any girlfriend is a good one? Well, everything depends on your opportunity cost. If you marry a boyfriend who is very good to you, he cooks for you and he massages you every night, and then you will say, oh, that is a fantastic marriage I got. Well, of course, if there was a boyfriend number two who would have not only cooked for you, massages you, and also have given you $100 to go shopping, then of course you missed a good opportunity of marrying that guy, and the opportunity cost was higher, and therefore your marriage is obviously not a very good match. Now the same thing can happen for a free trade agreement. That when you blindly go out and sign free trade agreements with, say, Panama, Colombia, Mexico, or any other, South Korea for that, we are thinking about that as well. When we go blindly sign all these free trade agreements, are we really having a trade creation in here or a trade diversion in here? And if the trade diversion is happening, then of course there is a opportunity cost that you need to worry about. Can we do a better job of signing a free trade agreement with somebody else or not? And if you have heard about that guy John Nash, whose life was picturized in that famous movie, A Beautiful Mind. Well, John Nash has a theory named after, it's called theory of second best. And the theory of second best obviously says the same thing, that you cannot just satisfy only few conditions of the most optimal situation and think that you are getting the second best solution. That if you want to do it, you have to satisfy all conditions of the most efficient situation. Otherwise, just satisfying only few doesn't really do a job. And that's exactly what the trade diversion idea is. So the point I am trying to make is that when we are thinking about the trade agreements with Panama or Colombia, we need to go to each and every good, like food grains and what type of foods we will export and import, because of course free trade is a two-way situation, and US is a very big player in international trade. When you are looking at absolute numbers, we are the largest importer in the world, we are the largest exporter in the world too. So not just we are going to import all these nasty food grains from Colombia and Panama, but we are also going to export them. Many of our computers and softwares and Facebook and probably all kinds of American-made products to them. So it is going to be a two-way traffic, and is it going to be a good for us or not? Of course, that depends upon how much ability we have in these trade agreements to create a trade creation rather than a trade diversion. And if we keep that in mind, then of course we can easily say, and by examining, and that's probably the reason why these free trade agreements are so humongous, because if you otherwise want to have a free trade with any other country, that agreement shouldn't take more than 2 pages, because what is there? Let's have a free trade, and then just have a second page where all presidents just sign, and there should be no clauses and anything. But as you know, NAFTA was roughly 800-page document. I bet these free trade agreements will be equally true. So in general, obviously we want to have some kind of a regulation, some kind of examination, and some kind of a watchdog on what we are importing, what we are exporting. But to deny a free trade to 2 countries is going to be a severe mistake, because the world is full of examples where not having a free trade clearly affects economic welfare in much more severe way in a macro analysis than having a free trade with any other country. And it is understandable that some countries will never trade with each other. It doesn't matter how much free trade you will do, like say India and Pakistan. Obviously, there will be political issues in there. There will be social, psychological, North Korea, South Korea. That these countries would never trade with each other. Doesn't matter what benefits of free trade there are going to be, or if at all they trade, the volume of their trade will be very small. So there will be political issues. There are going to be some regulation and other issues that we need to worry about, and I think that's what the free trade agreements do. So our staff in Washington DC obviously examines all of these things, and we understand what are the consequences and perceived consequences of free trade with something like Colombia and Panama. And if we do a good job of watching all these and regulate them, I think free trade is great. As I said, there is just no doubt about the gains from trade, and it's not just the theory which is telling us; it is the evidence which we can see and show to protect that argument. Thank you for listening to me, and I will be happy to answer questions.
And once again, we'll hold off on open discussion until after everyone has spoken, but is there anyone who has a question of clarification, something you'd just like to get clearer on? The definition? All right, we'll come back for a more open discussion in a few minutes, and right now we will turn to Cara Martinez.
It's Cara Martinez.
Cara Martinez.
Thank you. Thank you. As Dr. Holland mentioned, I am a Korbel grad, and it's been a few years, so I'm very happy to be back here at my alma mater and to be speaking. I graduated with a master's in international human rights, and today I'm here to talk to you about the free trade agreement, largely with Colombia, especially from that perspective. both of the other panelists have already given just incredible data and analysis on this. And so I'm going to speak of the small farmer, but I also want to add in and incorporate things like the Civil War and the militarization of the U.S. war on drugs in Colombia to respond to the question that you posed, and also to discuss why especially and notably, not only from an economic perspective in terms of the small farmer, but also from a human rights perspective, the U.S.-Colombia Free Trade Agreement is especially troublesome and can have devastating consequences, not only for food security, water security, but also for human security and national security of Colombia. So that will kind of be my overview. In terms of the small farmer does play a pivotal role in all of the things that I just mentioned. The small farmer is very important to the economy, not only of Colombia, not only the local domestic market, but also for the international market. And Sasha, or Dr. Breger-Bush mentioned, whichever you prefer, mentioned a number of statistics that spoke about that. Just to reiterate, small farmers, and when I speak of small farmers, I'm not talking necessarily of subsistence farmers, although they do grow subsistence crops for their own households, but they also grow cash crops and livestock and dairy, agricultural products for sale on the local market and make their living from that. So approximately 50% of the Colombian agricultural sector, 1.8 million farmers are considered small farmers. They represent 10% of the number of persons employed in Colombia as a whole, and 12% of all Colombian households. So that's roughly 10% of the Colombian economy. They make a huge contribution in terms of Colombian agriculture. There's just some additional statistics, and then we can go in both short cycle and permanent crops. So you can go on. Okay. And then again in livestock production, and these are all going to be affected greatly with the U.S. Free Trade Agreement, and we can just leave it there for the time. Well, you can leave it on this one, actually. So the contributions that small farmers make, they put local food into circulation, they provide subsistence for themselves and their family, which creates a level of food security, and they also boost the income. Now, the reality is that it's a very perilous way to make a living. Number of small farms are incredibly impoverished, and they don't often make beyond, basically, they don't make a lot of capital. However, it does, again, provide food for local circulation, a livelihood for 1.8 million people, and again, it provides that level of security that is necessary in the country.